Great, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having us. And I know that this may be something that many of you are already familiar with, but as we were reaching out for help on this from some of our peer communities, found that many people were not aware of the resources available to them to complete electrification projects. And so just wanted to take a couple of minutes to share what we've learned and how this learning interacts with some of the 3CE's program. So first, I just want to ask if folks can in the chat, if you have bought an electric vehicle for your fleet or plan on doing so, or have installed a charger for your fleet or plan on doing so, can you type the number 1 in chat and send it out? I just want to get a sense of where people are on these types of projects. There's 2 of us that have purchased vehicles. I know there's more.
I personally know there's more.
Okay, we can be patient. There's 3, 4.
Go. What was the question again, Chris?
Have
Answer
you
number
have
one?
you in the last year or in the next year, have you or will you purchase an electric vehicle for your fleet or any kind of charging infrastructure projects? Cool. So we'll take the 4 of you ones as a sample of the rest, 5. Go ahead and press 2 if you also filed for elective pay as part of that project's funding stack. If you don't know what I mean, don't write anything. But if you know what I mean, press 2 and enter that in chat.
Oh, this is interesting, Chris. We know you did. You're our local expert now.
Okay, so I'm going to take that to mean Filipina and Rexford and Dana and Aaron have not taken advantage of the free money available to them for the stuff they already bought or are about to buy. So that's what I wanted to share with you all today. So there's something that we all have access to now as local governments called elective pay. This allows local governments, nonprofits, and other entities with no federal tax liabilities to receive direct pay via tax credits for certain types of projects. This was brought about by the Inflation Reduction Act from 2022, and it covers 12 types of sustainability projects. And I'll go into that in a minute, but there are types of projects I'm not going to talk about because they're nothing they're not things that are common for most of our local governments, but there's a link to the resource in the slide deck. What's important is that the dollars that we're talking about here to help pay for projects stack with other rebates and incentives like the 3CE rebates. Just as an example of the relevant common city projects that these elective pay tax credits cover or tax rebates cover, they cover electric vehicle purchases, they cover electrical vehicle charging infrastructure. If you are generating biogas for self-consumption, so if you decide not to go with the biomat, but you still have biogas that you're consuming for on-site electrical, and you've done a project to increase that biogas or otherwise generate it in the last year, you are eligible for credit if you're building solar, battery storage, et cetera. So there's a wide range of things that you can receive money from the federal government for completing. Next slide, please. So I just want to talk about the simplest and cleanest version of what this looks like is with fleet vehicles. Some of the topics like if you're setting up your own power generation that's larger than certain megawatt size, it gets quite complicated. But for fleet vehicles, it's quite simple. You get $7,500 for every battery electric vehicle you buy, $7,000 for every plug-in hybrid vehicle you buy. So in our example, in fiscal year 23-24, we bought, excuse me, 12 vehicles, and we have expected to come back to us just $500 shy of 90 grand coming back to us for those vehicles. Next slide. Just to take this out of the abstract, just to let you all know what it would entail to get this money yourself. It's for the vehicles, it's as simple as collecting vehicle information, including your vehicle's VIN, where it's located in your in your city facilities. Basically, much of the data that you would be collecting for your 3CE rebates is what you need to collect for this as well. So there's a nice two trees with one acorn effect there. So the steps are you collect that information, you go to the Inflation Reduction Act website, and you just enter that information as well as some information about your city. You submit that to the IRS. They give you the thumbs up that you have enough information to process your filing. There's separate tax forms for this that you fill out. So the example here is for the electric vehicles we purchased. You enter some information about those vehicles, you submit those tax forms, and you get your money back. And so it does require a bit of new administrative capacity and some new understanding of interacting with forms, but we've already spent the money on the vehicles, we've already collected the information, so it's really just some administrative overhead to get the extra dollars. Next slide. And the dollars are meaningful. Obviously, an F-150 is going to be much more expensive than this. A very large fleet vehicle is going to be more expensive than this. But just as an example of a $30,000 Bolt EV that we purchased, we were able, with the 3CE rebate and with the tax credit, to get the final capital cost of this fleet asset down to just under $19,000, which is pretty incredible for any new vehicle, especially for an electric vehicle. Next. So as we look ahead at the city, and I know this is true for many of you as well, a lot of the low-hanging fruit fleet projects are going to be done, and you're going to be looking at larger, more expensive and complicated charging projects. Maybe you'll be moving on to medium and heavy-duty electric vehicles. And the good news is that some of the resources scale up as you do larger and more complicated projects. But some of those larger, more complicated projects also have more complicated administrative requirements. So as an example, the map here shows the census blocks in the city of San Luis Obispo that are eligible for fleet charging tax credits, and those change every several years through 2032. So it's not all super simple, but again, most of us are buying these assets and have the information in place, and it makes sense to get the money for it. Next slide. So as maybe you are hearing this for the first time, or perhaps you've heard it many times and are thinking, darn, I guess I should take this more seriously and go get some of those federal dollars to help our projects. Just a couple things to remember: that you get to choose your tax year. We're doing fiscal year because it lines up with our auditing purpose, so that makes sense for us. That you need to file all of your projects for a given tax year together. So if you have assets in an enterprise fund and in your general fund, they need to be filed together, which just takes some cross-agency coordination. That you're liable for any errors you make. This is a tax filing after all, and that the city will receive a single payment afterwards. And so there are a couple of cities folks on here that I see that have already started to collaborate on this. This is just sort of a high level overview of what's available, and just wanted to share that these dollars are pretty accessible, and when stacked with other dollars makes achieving our sustainability goals even more feasible, and allows our cities to save even more money. So would just offer that if folks are interested in learning more, would be happy to convene a working group amongst city staffers to figure out how to do so. And with that, Judy, happy to end my presentation, and I imagine if there's time for questions, can take those later.
Thanks so much, Chris. I really appreciate the spirit with which you shared this information.